All right. Well, thank you for joining us for our June edition of our Kentucky K-12 CIOs Education Technology Leaders monthly get together. I'm David Couch with the Department of Education. We do this every month for our districts. And this particular month, and really the next month, is probably the lowest attendance that we have annually, which is understandable. Folks are taking time off, and I encourage everyone to take some time off over the next few months before we officially begin the next school year. But things do move on. And during my course of this is the 28th year I've been part of the KETS environment, is while teachers and other folks in schools take well-deserved time off, but we do know a lot of the district staff stay there during the summertime. But during the Department of Education staff, we are always preparing, closing out the previous school year and preparing for the next one, and to get it in place. And so we will cover a lot of items today. The expectation is not that all the districts have it done in June. But for those that always do join us throughout the years, we do want to reward those that joined us in June to kind of keep up with what's going on, so they're not surprised in July and August timeframe, because sometimes the first time folks rejoin us is in August. Typically, our biggest watch webcasts are in May, which is the last month. We cover a lot of material. We sent you the summary of that. August is usually our next biggest one, and in January as we begin the year after the Christmas break. But these 2 months are typically are the least joined ones that we have. But we always cover material. We're always moving forward with a lot of things preparing for the next school year. For those that joined us, thank you for joining us today. I do have a lot of our staff that are on here, and the leadership positions that will be going over items and their areas is the way we're going to do it today. Also remind you about Go Soapbox. Is please join in on that. In the summary notes that were sent to you yesterday, you can see the examples of the feedback that we got. It's just so important, and your voice does count. And just think, as you're answering them, think as if you have the folks, standing physically behind you, that you're answering on behalf of the district, and just not yourself personally. But if you had everyone around you, what their answer would be if you were presenting in front of an audience to your local board or to your folks within your district. So I encourage you to do that. I believe we have 9 questions, and Go Soapbox, I believe that's what it was. And we have a discussion question, and that's very helpful to us, and it's helpful to all of you as well, because obviously you can see from the Go Soapbox, we share it with all the districts. So you kind of can see where everybody else is at, which is a really valuable thing. And just a reminder, in this format, since we have over, looks like 130 people on here, or 120, whatever it is. It's tough to deal with chat. So we encourage you, for any feedback you have during it, the questions, put those in Go Soapbox. The top ones bubble to the top. So this is just not the poll and discussion question, but this is just questions or comments that you have. So please use that mechanism to provide comments throughout versus the chat, because we're not really I'm not watching the chat, more so I'm having people. And just a reminder, our staff is just remind me of folks you all pause once in a while and say, what are we covering? What's this thing that's bubbled to the top that we need to address? But typically all during, we have our staff responding to those Go Soapbox questions. And so every one of them is read and looked at, even though we may not bring it up as bubbling to the very top. So once again, appreciate your all's attendance today on Microsoft Teams here, as well as those following us on YouTube. So let me hit a couple items before I turn it over to our staff on where we're at. The Lexington Herald came out with the article last Friday, and it was about, and I think it's worth reading if you get on papers. I read 3 or 4 different newspapers every day to get different perspectives on things. Usually the truth is somewhere right in the middle of all those perspectives. But this one was pretty good. It was talking about the participation of folks during the past 8 weeks of NTI. And Marty made a good suggestion. And Marty, by the way, Marty Park, I did bring that up with the KD leadership team yesterday afternoon. I thought it was a really good article. Thought it was a fair article. The part they left out was typically the last 1 or 2 weeks of the school year, as most of you know, is one of the least attended. I mean, you can just see this drop going down. And so they probably need to mention that and also compare how the last few weeks of a school year look in comparison to what happened to NTI. But the questions will be is, we have attendance, and attendance is different than participation. But folks in leadership positions, the legislature, I suspect will answer, ask questions about the participation. Definitely I have teachers, current teachers, and obviously retired teachers in my family. But I did ask them how NTI went. They taught through NTI, and they talked about this really high participation, the first 4, even 6 weeks. But the last 2 weeks of it, it dropped pretty dramatically. But once again, is how well did that compare to the drop of a normal school year, and how will that affect the upcoming school year? Which we, with everything with the status of the COVID-19, there is no vaccine yet. Probably this time next year is what most people are saying is when we will see a vaccine in pretty high numbers. Her immunity is not there yet. There's not a good treatment to really lessen the days. They've lessened it by a few, but not substantially. And so the discussions that I listen in on, and the superintendents at least once a week are on a call. There's also something called the Continuation Task Force, Education Continuation Task Force. It's got beefed up now with some legislators on it, some folks in the governor's office, some other folks from what we call the K groups, the Kentucky Association of this and that are on it. It's been meeting weekly at least. Now that got beefed up yesterday to really talk about what the beginning of the school year looks like, and around the masks, how the masks work, who wears the mask. A big step that was taken was the buses. And with anything with this, when you're talking to a professional, they will typically give you the most extreme, cautious view, an approach to take, and you have to put reasonableness to it and accept a certain amount of risk that's associated with it. And that's what you see with the health professionals now. With all their intentions are good. Still, this is a very serious thing. COVID-19 is very serious. But how do you, what is practical to do in a K-12 setting to begin the school year? So you see folks every week, thinking about it and thinking about it more. Marty Park has presented to do both different groups, the superintendents and the Education Situation Task Force, within the past 3 or 4 days, of the different models that we showed you all last month. And really, the big step that was made with the buses was you don't have to be spaced out. The distance, you would have to be running buses all day long if you did that, and it'd be very unrealistic in that setting to go forth with that. So they've now agreed that the masks, people wearing masks, but then the difficulty of having children, especially younger children, wearing the mask, keeping them on, wearing them properly, not having them droop down here, because the things that are coming out now is mainly through the droplets in your breath, whether you're coughing, laughing, whatever, you're sneezing, whatever it is. That's what the main way that you're getting it, although you need to follow the other good practices, obviously. So how do you enforce that with younger children? So that's been on the mind of a lot of folks, a lot of discussion. I did ask my oldest daughter, who's a teacher, what her thoughts begin next school year. And much like most teachers, her view is on, this is my time off. I've worked super hard, and she's I'm going to let others take care of getting that, making that decision. And I think that's really, the view of a lot of teachers. They've worked hard, the hours they put in, particularly the adjustments they had to make to the NTI toward the end. And this is not high up on the radar screen, but for us to prepare for the next school year, obviously it's high up on the radar screen. The commissioner search is also a big part of the discussion. I think they got it down to 6 candidates now. I don't foresee, and obviously everything changes, that you'll have a final person selected and placed and going back and forth till mid-July or maybe August, maybe even September. But it looks like that process is moving forward, and they're narrowing it down, and it'll still require some back and forth. For folks just wondering how things are going on in the department, we were the first state agency to go 100% telecommuting. A lot of it is because we were more prepared than the other part of state government to do that. And while there has been some things that not gone 100%, is for the most part, and for a very high percentage of it, is to say it's worked really well. I suspect this will be part of the way we operate for quite some time, and just not our office. Our office was always a big into telecommuting. But I suspect other officers are now seeing that you can be very productive. In fact, you actually can get more production out of folks if you allow them to work in a remote settings if their job allows it. And there's certain positions that allow it, certain positions that really that's not a good fit for it. And obviously in schools where they're really used to having children in a classroom, is NTI was meant for very short periods of time, not for a year-round experience. But I think we're going to see as the year starts, and we've already seen some of it, X percent of parents, and I don't know what X percent is, the exact percentage, great apprehensions of having their children come back at the beginning of the school year just to tell it how it all plays out. And so what's going to be the mode of operation for them? And then what's going to be the mode of operation if you do have a child or a staff member within the school that gets it? Does it shut down just that school, part of the school, the entire district? How's that operate as we go through all the waves? So we're all trying to figure that out as we're going forward. The other part is with cybersecurity is for the Department of Education, and Bob Hackworth's going to share some of the things that we've done in KDE. Is this, and unfortunately during this time you would hope that people would show some compassion, but the cyber criminals have ratcheted it up. And for us, it's been somewhere between a 5 and 10% increase in attempted cyber attacks on KDHC staff. I suspect that's going K-12 wide, trying to take advantage of so many people still trying to do things in a setting where they're not usually doing that for that long a period of time. So that's why we've ratcheted up and accelerated some of the things we're doing in KD, the agency. Doesn't mean you could do it in the district. And you can see from some of the Ghost Soapbox questions that we're asking, a lot of them have to do with, a good chunk of them have to do with cybersecurity. You can see we're doing some things in Department of Education with encryption of all the hard drives and with passwords. But we're also moving forward with a lot of things we had already planned to do. And just want to make sure you're aware of it and you got the right kind of folks that are aware of it within the district. So I'll pause right there. Is there, from those that are watching Go Soapbox for me on our staff, is there anything that's popped up from that's worthy of me pausing on and talking about before we move forward?
David, we do have some really great interaction in Go Soapbox. Some social questions are coming in, which is great. I think they're going to hit some of the discussion as we move forward.
Okay.
More directly.
All right. Just for you, before I turn it over to the directors and chiefs in our office, is even Microsoft Teams is, I know they announced today, and I sent out to our staff about the upgrades they're making to their product line. We saw a non-disclosure, and Tim Cornetta, who's I'm sure watching, I'm not going into all the details of with non-disclosure, but you did announce some things we could say publicly, which really enhance the features of just not settings like this, but settings in a classroom, which when I saw it, I was pretty impressed of how a teacher could use that within a classroom, a virtual classroom, and the good move that Microsoft has made in that direction with addressing a lot of different things that we brought up to them over the course of time. So we'll be, and I don't know if there's a part here we kind of tell them about the new enhancements to Teams that we put out, or we just say that, but that's for the Department of Education, we're mainly users for our staff of Google Meet and Microsoft Teams for those, but Teams has just made some recent announcements of addressing some of the needs that we have. So the first up is I'm going to, and I didn't see if he's on, is Phil Coleman here?
David, I was going to mention real quick on that note, just, since you brought it up, I think it's important over the next several weeks that we all continue to watch our big partners, specifically Google and Microsoft in this space, and features continue to be added. And maybe it's I'm biased a bit, but I love that it seems like it's really targeted. Both Microsoft and Google are targeting K-12 and trying to help us implement and reopen in the fall with some more tooling that is free and readily available to us. And I think it's important to watch both Microsoft and Google's, and of course, we'll help do that as well. We're watching and we're pushing and using, but also specifically our field staff are working really hard to think about the integration in terms of design and strategy. So I wanted to mention that.
So Phil's going to be first up. We have part of the CARES money that we've had going to do some things, and Phil's going to include that in discussion. But we already had some things planned to do during this time. And so Phil's going to give an update on a lot of the things that in his area is our chief technology officer and his division, the things that are impacting our school district. So Phil, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure. Well, we have ratcheted up our timelines on a lot of things, David. And you mentioned some of the security things, and I certainly want to touch on those because we have quite a few Go Soapbox questions, and we're getting lots of answers in. So we'll want to throw those up on the screen in a minute. But we are making sure that we have a really good, solid network. So when we get back to school in whatever flavor and design that would be, that we have really good technology in place to support that. We completed the 200 gig upgrade for the internet. We are almost finished with the switch upgrade in every school district. And that also includes the out-of-band management part. We're updating that. I think that was about 10 or 12 years old. And then we are just in the beginning stages of the UPS upgrade. And with the UPS upgrade, we also are having our vendor partner that's doing that upgrade install the new VPN for Munis in every school district. So I think we have a Go Soapbox question on that, David. It's number 5. Andy, can you throw that up so we see where we're at on that?
I got you, Phil. I'm gonna throw that up.
All right, thanks. So the question is, as part of the UPS upgrade project, we're also replacing the Munis VPN. And how knowledgeable and involved are your finance officers in that, and how many of them know that? So we have highly involved and aware, 31%, somewhat involved and aware, 54%, and limited to no involvement, 15%. We only have 26 responders, but hopefully that'll increase over the course of the webcast.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, don't think that we're done. To Phil's point is, if you haven't got on Go Soapbox, I don't know if we put the link up. I was just sitting thinking, I don't think when I sent the invite, usually I put the link in there for it. So I don't know if we can, just quickly, tell what that link is. But please go throughout this, because the entire webcast will take the final count of that, and that's what we share. So please try to get on and share and Go Soapbox if you're not already there.
And let me just mention, if you're watching through YouTube, then app.gosoapbox.com, app.gosoapbox.com. And I know Andy is throwing, and Megan are throwing that information up on the screen as well. And the access code is EdTech.
Okay. Very good. And then the things that we're doing, David, and for our district EdTech leaders, we're really ratcheting up and speeding up the timeline for the security things that we're doing for KDE. And a lot of these apply to K through 12 also. We were able to complete what we called banners, email banners. And so these are just warnings, and I know you all have seen these many, many times. These are just kind of warnings that this email that you're getting is not, maybe coming from an outside agency. But in our banner implementation, we included school districts and state agencies and a couple other organizations as we excluded the banners for them. So we don't, when we get an email from you guys, we don't throw the banners up there, because we consider that part of our K through 12 friendly organization. We were also able to implement something called safe links and safe attachments. And I like to think of this as a minefield. And we've got somebody going out and sweeping that minefield and kind of blowing up those attachments and blowing up those bad links before they ever get to our KDE customers. And that was a part of the advanced threat protection that we have with our A5 licenses for Microsoft. We also are doing disk encryption. I know we have a Go Soapbox question on that. I think it's number 1. And, with all of our staff telecommuting and they're taking vacations and stuff, we just felt like the disk encryption was a really important step in protecting us against cyber criminals. Go ahead, David.
No, I'm just looking here at the as he blew it up,
Yeah.
what the number is. For us, this was important because once again, for a breach, and you all need to think through it as well. If a laptop during this time where most people are at home and maybe we're traveling someplace, if the laptop is stolen or lost, it does not have to be reported as a breach, because if it has encryption, obviously it has to have a password on it as well. It can't just be, and I would say 99% of the laptops, if not higher than that, have a password to actually get on it. So just like your phone, your cell phone, you want to have some kind of password to get, so they can't get straight through it, because encryption is worthless unless you have a pretty good password on it as well. But it keeps you from having to report that. So for us, it was important, and I just wonder if that's on your radar screen, how high that is going forward. It's not saying you've done something incorrect by not having it right in place now, but we were just kind of curious, given that we've moved forward with it and tend to have it in place by June for all KD agency staff, is just where districts were at on it.
And
Correct.
This is Bob. If I could throw a couple of things in there. Ideally, you wouldn't have much PII on a laptop at all, or sensitive or confidential information, and so having an encrypted laptop is just double protection, I guess. But what we've discovered is that almost everybody has employee information, and they keep insurance information and things like that on their laptop. So even though they might not be keeping student information on there, they might have information about themselves. And so it's important to go ahead and encrypt that laptop to keep them from exposing their own information, if nothing else. Okay, over now.
And what we found is it runs behind the scenes. The average person can't tell it's being done. And I know not everyone's on, the Windows 10, and so it works on, the Windows 10 environment. But we when it was running on mine, I was doing a bunch of other things and could not tell it was being done in the background. So that's a really nice feature of it for our staff. Thanks. Back to you, Phil.
Okay. So for question number 2, we talk about the upgrade to passwords. In KDE, we are in the 3rd week of that. We're taking it office by office, and so far it's been very successful, and we're getting people over to the new password phrase or passphrase versus a password. And Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, we may want to have just a short discussion about this. For data breaches and security breaches, it's mostly due to people stealing, especially in K-12, I think people stealing laptops out of people's homes, or the passwords being weak and being a vulnerable point. So I think if you take care of the passwords and disk encryption, that is really eliminating 2 big points of security.
Correct.
Okay.
I think for us, Phil, as we've gone through this, and I don't mind sharing the with our field staff to share with the districts, and maybe they've already done it, the communication that we put out to KDHC staff explaining this, why we're doing it. And, a good question I got was, okay, you said it has got to be at least 15. How far above 15 can it go? Can it go above 15? And that's, I can't remember, it's in the 200s and some. You can make it that large, but just asking basic questions. So we try to write it, as my staff knows, in Waffle House speak, that the average person with no technology background or very little, or even very resistant to do anything, we've made the steps very, very simple to do. And so far, so good.
And I do want to remind everyone on the call that multi-factor authentication is always an option, and what we are doing at KDE, we've slowed down on pushing out multi-factor authentication. That's still an option for folks at KDE, but we're not going through the process of, okay, you deal with PII every day, and so you have to have MFA turned on. But that does have an implication for your password length, because multi-factor authentication is still such a secure method of protecting your password. Folks who go that direction are also able to keep just an 8-character password. Now, myself, I enjoy a passphrase. I use a passphrase no matter what, because it's just simpler for me to remember. But for folks who do choose to go MFA, then they do have that choice to go with a shorter password.
Thanks, Bob.
Mhm.
Also, starting up, and I'm going to ask Chuck to, if Chuck Austin is on the line, to kind of step in and give us a brief discussion on the Lightspeed relay. I know
Sure.
we start to implement that in July 1, but we're doing some early implementations, before then, right?
Absolutely, Phil. And we've got some good questions out there on Go Soapbox already,
Sure.
because I know some folks are anxious, which we appreciate. We feel like the statewide purchase that we've made for all to participate in the new relay architecture is critical. I think it's something we've all seen in the last several months that's going to provide great benefit to everyone, regardless of location, which is one of the big benefits of the technology. The fact that now, whether you're at school, or whether you're at home, regardless of where you're at, you have a filtering policy that's active on devices that obviously districts have issued. So that being said, we've got a kind of a two-phased plan right now, and we're going to be releasing a lot more details about this. Phil and I will over the next couple of weeks. We've got a small number of districts that have traditionally never been Lightspeed customers for a variety of reasons, that have expressed an interest in wanting to jump over to Lightspeed. And right now, we've got some engineering activities we're going to be focused on to get those folks up and functioning and functional before July the 1st, especially for anybody that has subscriptions with any other service provider that are looking to expire. And then we're also working directly with Lightspeed and having them gear up for what we feel like is going to be a pretty aggressive push prior to the start of school for a lot of other folks to implement the service. Just a note, as we've been talking through this, Mike Ladingham, David, Phil, Marty, and all of us, as we started this conversation at the beginning of the year, our original thoughts were that we would target implementation of Relay sometime between July the 1st and the end of the calendar year. And lo and behold, we were all hit with a health crisis. And we've heard from a lot of school districts that really, really would like to get the clients deployed prior to school starting. So what we're asking of everybody right now is just be patient with us for just a couple of more weeks. And then we absolutely intend to release Lightspeed kind of driving what we're going to do to get districts onboarded as quickly as they can. People are already licensed, just so you'll know. Lightspeed's already received everything they need from us to extend the contract. The licenses cover everybody in the state. So there's really nothing that has to be done administratively behind the scenes, as much as there's some technology things that Lightspeed needs to work with districts directly on, all right, on the back end, as districts deploy the Relay client on all of their district-owned workstations. But Phil, I think you and I would both agree, we want to make sure that we can provide an avenue for any district that needs to move quickly to do so starting July 1. And
Right.
then we're going to push pretty hard to make sure that everyone can get there by the end of the calendar year. So there's just some details for folks. I hope that answers or addresses some of the questions we've seen in the Go Soapbox poll.
Marty,
Sure,
can you go
would
ahead
it-
and put up that poll question?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we can see what the results are. Number 4.
So it looks like we have a majority of our school districts that are attending to or participating in the poll that intend to go before school starts. So
Thanks.
It's a good result.
Yeah, so we talked about this yesterday in our OET leadership team meeting. And, one of the things that now that, Relay is the cloud service, the design's in place, and Chuck, and, tell me if I go down a path that's incorrect, is for those that are, and this is, we asked this question in May, how high up on the radar screen is providing internet access to the home of the district paying for internet access to a phone and finding a provider to do that? And it was lower. I mean, everything else was pretty high and it was lower, but there's X% of districts that have done it or will do it. So it's important. The question I asked Phil and then to Lightspeed is how many of these districts that have provided internet access to the home are pointing it back, whatever the hotspot or the service they have, so it goes to the school district. And so going forth with the relay design, that is, we don't want that. In fact, it will be a thou shalt not do it. There's one reason it's very inefficient, is when you pay for a last mile hotspot service, you're also paying for the middle mile and all the way to the drain. Sending that back to come through us does not make any sense. It's a waste of a service that you're paying for. It's also not an E-rate eligible service. Those services that, and that was set up back in the late 90s. They did not want E-rate to be in competition, especially the school districts being in competition with last mile providers to the home. And so we're going to try to identify the districts that have that pointing back to the district to actually start having it pointed up to the cloud, the relay service, because it does the same thing for the school issued devices. So Chuck and Phil, is there anything else I need to say based upon we spent quite a bit of time talking about this topic yesterday. Is there anything else we need to add as we have the district audience here with us today?
No, David, I think you covered it well. The big point there I think folks can appreciate is, when you go all the way back to, the implementation of Senate Bill 230 back in 1998. And then fast forward to the point in time when districts started sending devices home. Really, the only way to make sure and being good stewards that those devices were protected, I'm going to use that in quotes, was to route traffic back through the district network. Technically, that was the only option they had. And, luckily, we're at a point now where the technology's evolved. And really and truly, as you mentioned earlier, it's an inefficient model to try and route traffic back to a district network. The beauty of the architecture we're deploying, and it's not specific to Lightspeed, I mean, it's just evolution of the industry, is now all of your filtering policy resides on the workstation. Your SSL decryption resides on the workstation. So wherever you go with that device, you're in compliance. I hate using the word compliance, but I'll say this. You're in compliance with Senate Bill 230 because you're filtering. Okay, you're in compliance with SIPA, even though there's always that really interesting argument on whether SIPA even applies to this. But at the end of the day, I think what we're saying is the clients are the most important part of this conversation. And it's to everybody's advantage to deploy the clients, because the second you do, then that device is now protected regardless of geographic location. So, yeah. Bill, anything you want to add to that?
Phil, you're muted.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good explanation of kind of how that works. But so, we're anxious to get started. I think Lightspeed's anxious to get started, and we're really, I think the timeliness of this service during this health crisis is critical. So,
and I would add, this is just not for your students; this is for your adults as well.
Absolutely.
And I would say, a lot of time and energy is spent on students' appropriate use of internet services and technology-enabled services, but this is an adult issue as well. And it's not a high portion of adults, but it's a proportion of them. And so this addresses that as well. So, and that was part of Senate Bill 230. In fact, I ensured that was in there because there was just this focus on the students. And I said, well, the adults should be able to walk the talk as well. And so that language for adults is in there, so that it would be intended for all the school-issued devices, whether it be for your adults or for your students.
We're doing this for KDE also. So,
right, and I love that this conversation has circled back around to where technologies have caught up with our student-centered and our human kind of centered focus of being respectful, responsible, and safe and savvy and social online. And one other point that Chuck just made that I think it's worth emphasizing is that this is the opportunity to truly leverage a cloud service. I mean, these are the benefits of a cloud service, so that we don't have to, have inefficient models of routing back through school districts. We leverage the cloud service that is being designed by our service partner.
And I would like to say, when you're using CARES funds to do something, we know that is a very temporary fund. For everything that we applied for, and we went over the last webcast, we got just about everything we asked for. We're very, very upfront. What is the ongoing funding source for it? So we have identified the ongoing funding source. So after the CARES funds runs out, we have identified the ongoing funding source at K, the agency, that will pay this as a shared service on behalf of all districts. So this is something that we know we have 11 that we have all districts except 11 that are using Lightspeed. And so I want to give those 11 the confidence that this is just not a 1 or 2 year thing. This is the investment we're making long term, because we feel it's the right thing to do. Okay, Phil, back to you.
Well, I think I covered all my points, especially the ones that had Go Soapbox questions, David. But I think it's a very, very busy summer for school districts. It's very busy for us, and we just want to make sure that we have all the really good things in place, security-wise and network-wise, when we start up school this coming fall, whatever that looks like. So
I think the other piece, and we don't spend a lot of time on it, is the analytics piece that we're paying on behalf of all districts. Obviously, these things, the relay, the clients have to be in place. It will give you a good feel for the first time of the details of the big things that are being used and the big things that are not being used. And so you can take a look at this, and this is being a good steward of taxpayer funds at the state level and also at your local district level. And these reports will be for you locally. For you may be investing in some kind of technology-enabled service and find a very low percentage of folks use it. Kind of like we did PD 360 many years ago. We were paying, $1 million, $2 million a year for it, and found out only 5% of the teachers were using it. It was, for those 5%, they saw value, but you can't pay for something that 95% aren't using. You're paying for it on their behalf. So we stopped funding that, and that's the model we use. So this gives you ability to really see what's being used and not used, and you may see, once again, that teachers are doing and students are going to certain places that for educational purposes, and you're saying, well, maybe we need to get a license for that, given so many are going to it and they're paying with it out of their own money to do that. So we do want that. It's not necessarily the urgency of some other aspects to get it on your radar screen, but the analytics piece with Lightspeed is an important with Mike. Mike, I don't know if you want to mention anything else about that. I know we're going to give a chance for you to speak here, but anything else about the analytics, because I know you were a big part of that.
Well, I think we just need to clarify that we added the analytics part and committed to that for the 2-year period. Covered by the CARES funding. That is an area where we don't have quite the long-term commitment as far as the dollars associated. So we'll assess and evaluate the value of that over the 2-year period, and hopefully be able to identify a way to proceed with that beyond that if it's found to be of high value to the districts and obviously to us overall at the state level.
Who is that speaking? I can't tell who that is.
Incognito.
So just an insight, at our OET leadership team, we tried to get Mike to turn on his camera because we'd heard he'd advanced his beard. So I think you get the award, Mike.
That's
so this was the reveal moment we've all been waiting for.
It's just a sign of a lot of wisdom. All that gray and white hair is a lot of wisdom, contribution to wisdom.
Well, it's also catch years. You're like 150 in catch years, just like I am. So
yeah, that's right.
That's impressive. That's for sure.
I think he's working for a Santa beard. He's got he's looking towards a Santa beard.
Always good to have, something to occupy some time, when you're not doing your regular work.
He's not quite ZZ Top, though. You're not quite ZZ Top.
It takes a while. I don't know if I can get there or not.
So let's pause right there. For those looking at Go Soapbox, what Phil covered, was there anything that bubbled to the top that we need to hit up on before Dee Dee speaks? For those looking at Go Soapbox for me.
There was a social question, David, that came in. So a question from one of our school district leaders. Several districts use AT&T hotspots that route back through our state network. Can we get one person to coordinate that between all districts? AT&T took weeks to get us set up originally, and we were not the first. And so that's more of a coordination question.
And I did want to say is the folks that did this did not do anything wrong. So I meant to say that early on. It was you were trying to do the right thing for the right reasons, but things have changed. We have a design now that does no longer requires you to come back. You can actually go straight to the cloud. So yeah, we'll be working on it. It's not like this got to be done, bam, like that. But for those that are getting ready to put forth a hotspot for the first time, is we want you aware that design needs to take in consideration just pointing it straight to relay versus coming back to the district. And those that already have them existing, is we need to move that design to relay.
And I love the nudge here. This is actually from Jimmy Pack in Franklin County, but his nudge here is that just a coordinated effort, right? So one person can coordinate as opposed to every district kind of offshooting on having to.
And so we'll get with them and talk to them about it. Yeah, that's a good to do for us. Thank you, Jimmy. Instead of you all having to do that and the time that was spent, because it was good. It was time well spent. It served us well. But thank you for doing that. We'll follow up with AT&T on that, Jimmy. Anything else, Marty, you see?
Yeah, there's another question I think it would be just real quick if you could touch on. We've got a district asking the question, can we get you are required or you are not required to filter student devices that are connected to non-district provided, I'm assuming, internet service providers? So it's the big question we've had and we've been discussing over the last 3 months about the difference between compliance and the difference between just being good stewards, understanding the times that we're in. So you want to take that one, Dave?
Oh yeah, and it's been a consistent answer since the 90s. So the state law is very clear, as is SIPA, because we've asked 100 times. If the parent is paying for the internet access at the home for a school issued device, the school district does not have to filter it. It is the parent's responsibility. That is SIPA. That is the state law. It's very clear. If the district gets into the business of providing internet access to the home, I do think that changes. You are the internet service provider, just like at the school district, you're providing internet access to them sitting in a classroom. And I think the expectation would be that when the school district becomes the internet service provider for the home, that it is absolute requirement for just like as they show up in your school buildings. Is any of the school issue devices that show up in a school building have to go through by law the internet content management system. That's it on that one. Dee Dee, you ready to take off?
Sure. Thanks, David. Some quick updates. First of all, we haven't talked about SAML and single sign-on for Infinite Campus for a while. That just has kind of not been forgotten, but just maybe died down in importance, immediate importance. But that work is still ongoing. Districts that want to continue to make that conversion at any time can reach out to Infinite Campus and set up a ticket, and that work can go on. We have delayed the required transition dates, so that we're talking about the end of the year, but there'll be additional discussions on that on a firm date as we make some decisions there. So just wanted to mention that on kind of as part of our conversations about security and some of the things that we're doing before school starts. It doesn't have to be done before school starts. We do have some school report card updates. The financial transparency, which was the last part of the 2018-19 school report card to be published, was published the end of May. So that year is done now. There has been some looks at the district and school websites to determine if they've actually posted the school report cards. That's something you might be able to help us with. We found a number of schools or a number of districts. We didn't look down at all the school level, but we found a number of districts that either were still linking to the old school report card or they did not have a link to the school report card at all. So messages have gone out to superintendents and school report card contacts, also asking you if there's anything you can do to help with that effort to make sure that those are there. We were preparing for a U.S. Department of Education monitoring audit. That is the reason why we did that check, because that is a requirement under ESSA And it's also a state requirement that the school's report card be linked to schools and district sites. So we do have, we are working on the 2021 school, the 1920 card, and that data will roll out at the end of September of 2020. There are some changes, data that won't be available, as you know. So there is a document posted on the CASES school report card page that shows the details of the COVID-19 impact and what data will and will not be available in the school report card this year. So if you're interested, check that out. Some other updates, some questions that we have out there on the CARES Act funding. We've got a couple items that are actually being worked on as part of that funding. One of them is I think it's question number 6, which is campus learning. And we are having our next training session on that. It's not really a training session, it's really more of an overview session on that tomorrow. So that's tomorrow afternoon. Information.
Can you bring up that question, Marty? Bring up 6 as she's talking about it.
So that information is available, has gone out to school, superintendents, CASES points of contact, CIOs, and we've asked that information be shared. So with chief academic officers and so forth, I think Amanda Ellis has shared it with her group too. So help us get the information out on campus learning, the training that's going to happen tomorrow. That is paid for 2 years. After that, there is not state funding eligible to continue to pay for that annually every year. Same thing.
So Dee Dee, let me pause here just a second. Keep the chart up here. This looks like, especially the unsure, tell me, Dee Dee, if it's wrong, is about the same percentage as it was last month. And obviously with campus learning and the online registration is, if you don't have that going at the beginning of the year, the likelihood of using it throughout the year is very small. So I was hoping that percentage still being discussed would be a smaller percentage by this time. Obviously in July, I'm definitely hoping that's a smaller percentage of either you made a decision yes or no. And for us, unlike the online registration, which it is paid for all, this one is only going to be paid for those that are using it. So we're going to be very interested in who gives the yes answer and no answer, because our intention is to only pay Infinite Campus for the yes, those that have firmly committed to using it, because we don't want that. We want to be good stewards of taxpayer funds and make sure it's just not being wasted and sitting. But as Dee Dee's talking about, we're trying to get us on the radar screen of the right people. And so we count on you to make sure your chief academic officer is aware of it. We've made Amanda Ellis, our chief academic officer, aware of it as well. This is not a thou shalt, that's for sure. We just want to make sure they're aware of this good opportunity, of the things it does that are campus learning related, and how it ties into some other things that you, with Google related, that you may be using that this helps out with. Back to you, Dee Dee.
Okay, and really there's, for campus learning, there's different parts of it that might be interested in different districts, where there's just interoperability. I know campus is continuing to work on Google and being one roster certified, and so that can automate the roster and the grading back and forth between the two systems. There's some other functionality for like academic standards, which you saw the announcement probably that came out today, that academic standards have been pushed out and can be pulled into campus by districts and will be pushed out by KDE. There's functionality within that for standards-based grading and so forth that is much more robust in the campus learning environment than it is without campus learning. There's also some functionality that campus is working on that they will roll out in late July. We probably won't see it till the first part of August, that will allow for tracking students and transferring students from like A, B and type of environments, things like that, tracking student participation and working virtually and so forth. So a lot of functionality, and sometimes it all works under campus without campus learning, but the functionality and the ability to look at the analytics and so forth is much more robust when you get to the campus learning offering. So keep that in mind. The other offering that we had talked about was the online registration. And we've had trainings the last 2 Mondays on that. And those are recorded. All the materials on both of these offerings are out in campus community. And you can look at any of the emails that I've sent out, and you'll have the link to those. The online registration, the next set of, we can go ahead and bring up that question. Thanks, Marty. The next set of training is going to be broken down by regions. We align these to the CATS region. So please help your folks in your district know which region you're part of so that they can participate as they need, as they want to. And on those dates, if they cannot make a specific date for your region, we're going to have some additional sessions or on Friday to be kind of makeup sessions, or we can have somebody join one of the other sessions if that works better for them. So that is coming up next week, and that schedule has been shared with districts and is also on that campus community site too. So looks like here we've got majority 30% saying they are participating, some still saying they're not sure. We've got a few either no. I apologize for the 2 no answers. I'm not sure how I ended up doing that, but and then we've got some that are considering for 2021. We were able to negotiate a price on this that made it worthwhile for purchasing it for statewide. So this has been purchased. There's no opting in. It's already been turned on for all districts.
I think the not sure has come down from when we
That's
asked
true.
it before. So that's good. That's the sign we're looking for. Is then this one obviously had to have a decision pretty early on because there's training that has to occur now on it, which we've had great participation. I appreciate you and your team leading that along with Infinite Campus, making that available.
David, I think there's a good indication here, and Dee Dee, you pointed it out, as 71%, and then 42 responses is pretty good for June for us, honestly.
Right. Yep.
But 71% are at a yes point for online registration.
Yeah.
And Dee Dee, can you speak to and David mentioned it, but maybe go a little bit further. So online registration is obviously getting set up and making a decision quickly on using and leveraging online registration well before school starts becomes really important. However, campus learning and some of the benefits that are extended and can be leveraged with the campus learning license can continue to be implemented throughout a school year and leverage, as opposed to having to have it enabled and powered up before kids get back. And so can you speak to that a little bit more?
Sure. We really felt like it was ideal for online registrations. Decisions had to be made in June. We had a 30-day rollout. That's part of the deal where we've had these trainings, and you're right, they've been very well trained, attended. We had 360 people participate in yesterday's sessions, so that's good stuff. We've got the campus learning, though, really right now we're still providing overviews. So if you've not made a decision on that one, I think Marty's right. You still have some time. We're going to provide some more specific targeted training available in August, because we really feel like there's not any need to train people right now, because it's going to be a couple months till they start using it. And if they don't use it, they'll forget it. So the training will really amp up in the August timeframe for the campus learning. The online registration should be up before then for teachers to use, families to use. And that way they've got that information. You're gathering the information. That if you can't make it happen this summer, that doesn't mean you can't work towards making it happen for transfer students over this next school year and have it ready to go for the next academic year. But for campus learning, it's you've got a little bit more time.
And I love what David's pointing out, and we will have to, correct me if I'm wrong, we will have to at some point have a cutoff date of districts who are opting in to campus learning, and we don't have that date yet. Is that correct, Dee Dee?
We do not have a firm date right now. I've told probably going to be around this 1st of September, but we've really not firmed up that date at this point.
Awesome. And you mentioned something, and I actually had it to share as well. But while you mentioned it, while we're talking about the power of the campus learning license, you mentioned the academic standards being pushed out across the state. And I just want to call out, because over about a year ago, we started some of the initial work towards, if you've been in Kentucky and you've been a part of K-12 in our schools, you know that our source of truth for Kentucky academic standards is are PDF files that we post, and those will remain the primary focus, because there's not just the actual standards in those documents, but it's a lot of implementation and learning around those documents. However, the companion work of getting what we refer to as machine readable standards into something and digital efficiency systems. This is interoperability at its best, right? Of using academic standards and our teachers being able to actually use them within tools and systems that we use on a day-to-day basis with students. And so getting those into Infinite Campus is a really big deal. A year ago, we had probably 5 or 6 districts that were super interested in this. I'm looking at you, Barron County, who invested energy into this. And so finally, we are able to now push those academic standards through partner applications and ecosystems like Infinite Campus, so that they can be leveraged in course design. And Dee Dee mentioned progress monitoring is a really big deal to finally, for the first time, have connected academic standards with how our students are progressing on an individual and personalized level. And so campus learning helps us do that. But without being able to push those academic standards forward, then we miss that opportunity. So that's exciting, Dee Dee, and I'm glad you shared that.
And we did get some feedback on that in question number 9, if you want to take a look at that. I don't know if you brought that up or not.
Absolutely. Pulling that up now. News to me, and that 51% of the 37 responses, this is one avenue so that you are aware as EdTech leaders, so that maybe you touch base and work with your academic leadership teams and your instructional leadership teams. But again, getting academic standards in an actionable, interactive, and usable companion piece is going to be really important for us. And you can kind of think through. It's not a huge leap to think about how connecting academic standards to the courses that we already have as a statewide, from a statewide course code perspective, designed all the way through assignments, all the way through progress monitoring, and so having actionable, interactive, machine-readable standards becomes a next really nice step for teachers. And so,
been a long time coming. Been trying to do that for a long time. So, I appreciate your effort, and that's not it's working through different offices of
that's right,
on the radar screen. So, thank you for thanks for getting that in place.
A couple more real quick things with Infinite Campus, just to let you all know, we are continuing to work with Infinite Campus, not as part of the online registration process, but to automate the household income form, which is referred to as the HIF form, for collecting with an electronic signature, so that we can kind of help reduce some of that paper. That's not going to be on the same timeline with online registration, but that work is continuing. Just wanted you to know it's on our radar and something we're trying to push forward towards. Another reminder on annual Infinite Campus invoices did go out in April. So payments are due no later than August 15th. So keep that in mind. And if you do need copies of the invoices, reach out to this KDE data request at education.ky.gov email address. Another topic on the PEBD program, which is the Pandemic Electronics Benefits Transfer Program. That is a partnership with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services. I know that is question number 8, if you want to bring that up. We've got the Group 1 students that have already been paid. Those students were students that are already receiving benefits from Cabinet for Health and Family Services. And the Group 2, which would be any CEP school that has students that would be eligible because they were receiving free benefits, or students that are eligible for free and reduced benefits, but not receiving other benefits. And those required applications. And we want to thank all those districts that did help get that word out, that those benefits are available to them. They needed the SSID, which is the state student ID, to be able to apply. So A lot of help from local help went into providing that information so that they could apply for those benefits. We still have a number of families that have not applied yet. So we are looking to continue to get that word out. So if you've not sent that message out and you can, that'd be a great thing to happen. Or if you can send reminders out. The benefit has to be claimed by the end of June. That's the end of the application period, and there's no going back. And just as a reminder, this is $313.50 per student if they're eligible for March, April, and May. So that is something that families at this point could probably truly benefit from, and we want to make sure that they know how to do that. So we do have that question, and it looks like we've had a lot of districts that have helped, either by putting something on the website or sending out something information, the Q&A, and then maybe some other districts that are not quite as familiar with it, or whether anything did go out or not. So any help you can do or continue to do on that is much appreciated by those families. That's all I got, David.
David, you're on mute real quick.
I'm going to go back to the very beginning, to where I talked about the Lex and Herald article on Fayette County, where no good deed goes unpunished type of thing. It's funny.
More you're on video driving.
Yeah, you may want to. Yeah, that's funny what's going on with him. We had Fayette County to where they actually implemented a piece. And what's the other district that has done that? I know it's Fayette, and another district has implemented a piece to where, as part of the byproduct of doing things, you could track participation. And to their credit, as they talk about in the article, that their numbers and participation during this NTI period is less than the averages around the state, because probably they had a much more accurate way, to be honest with you, probably to collect participation. And participation is different than attendance. But I'm telling you, there'll be folks interested in what is the true participation, especially in a distance and virtual learning environment, as we go down through the school year. So it's not a requirement, thou shalt use this tool, but I suspect there'll be more interest in a much more defined way of collecting true participation during an NTI process than just a total swag at it. And obviously the IC tool will allow that to happen. So Dita, I know Fayette County collected, the other district? I think there was another district that did it, or maybe I was wrong.
County did also.
Who did it?
Jefferson County.
Oh, okay.
So the two bigger districts did that, and the functionality that Infinite Campus is, we've got a sneak preview of it. Looks really good, a little bit more robust than what they were able to pull together for the spring collection.
Yeah, so they're still modifying it.
Yes.
As I know. So I do think that'll be an item of interest, and I appreciate, like I say, no good deed goes unpunished, what Fayette County and Jefferson County did. But I suspect it's on the way for other districts as folks get much more interested in true participation during a year-long more of an emphasis on distance and virtual learning. Well, thank you, Dee. Mike, you're next up to any of the updates you want to provide that we didn't cover already?
I'll quickly hit on a few things, especially in the interest of finishing before 11 o'clock, and it's 11:03. And I also want to comment on, I like your surge suppressor there. It looks like it also doubles as a drop light whenever you may need to have a little assistance in adding a little light to your project work. So anyway, on a lot of these initiatives we already spoke to that I have involvement in kind of behind the scenes. I'm a lot of times involved on the front end of us getting things in place to do some of the things we're doing. And then obviously if we're managing and facilitating them as a project. So I'm not going to go through all this. I'm just going to make a quick statement on, we got a lot of things going on. I know I have a count right now of 14 different kind of projects and initiatives, things categorized as projects and initiatives that we've got going on active right now and going on over the next 6 months that districts have to be involved in, have awareness in, have scheduling considerations and disruption considerations and so forth. And that's not counting regular operational type stuff that we got going on. So we'll through the KE team, I know that they get into the details of those a lot more. But I just think everybody needs to be paying attention. Make sure you communicate with your counterparts in your districts, your other leaders in your districts. And that's, not specifically calling out our efforts on what will kind of I'm specifically referring to as kind of next generation CATs is we got some big overlying initiatives going on that have several sub activities going on within them, such as Active Directory and our K through 12 internet going forward. We have contractual considerations to take in consideration in the near future. And so there's a lot of things under some big umbrellas of again, what I'm calling next generation CATs that will be facilitating those conversations and ensuring the districts know where we're at with those. And on top of that, we obviously have several open bids and procurement activities going on. Specifically, I want to mention, and I'm not going to go into too much detail because I do have a call immediately after this call with Office of Procurement Services and Finance Administration Cabinet. I received notice yesterday where it looked like they were not going to be able to get our new contracts in place for 2 different categories, even though we felt like we was really on track and in good shape. And one of those is the instructional devices, and one of those is the server storage contracts. Now, again, I got a call with them immediately after this our team's meeting here, so I'll have a little bit more detail. We'll make sure we get that out about where those are at. If those are not able to be put in place, then the word I got yesterday was that they would do 3-month extensions on our existing contracts, even though those are expiring as of the end of June. But that's still problematic for us as far as being able to take advantage of the new contracts and the things that come along with those new contracts. So again, I'm being just very transparent on the fact that that's active information. And I'll have more to share out. And we'll make sure we get that out either directly or through the KE group immediately as we get a little bit more feel. I do want to mention, obviously we're still in the budget planning process and so forth, but things right now are looking good for us to forecast at least the same amount of offers of assistance for the upcoming fiscal year. We'll get a better firm idea of what that'll look like as we get further along with the budget process. Certainly can be impacted, hopefully in a positive way, by us being able to take advantage of CARES funding, as well as continue to maximize E-rate funding, federal E-rate funding. But the good news is we feel really comfortable that we're pretty safe and secure around the same as what we have had, the $21 per ADA, but certainly may be able to have positive impact. Now, of course, there are some things that can happen to have negative impact, such as budget cuts and so forth. Anyways, we'll certainly be advising on that as we go forward. I think those are the things I just wanted to really touch base on. Again, a lot of the other things being touched on by others, I don't need to rehash or try to speak to those beyond what's already been spoken to.
Thank you, Mike. Bob, you want to give a reminder of folks. We've talked about a lot of the cybersecurity things and work that in, but there's one big reminder you want to make of folks today. So I'll let you go ahead and do that.
You got it, David. I just want to remind everybody that this August, of course, you'll have to report out to your boards about your cybersecurity readiness, kind of a cyber health check for your district and your data systems. I've put together some stuff. I sent it out last year to the KEs. I'll send this information back out probably this week, next week. You've got till August, but there's no time like the present to start collecting information and getting that report out to your boards ready. If there are any questions about that, feel free to send me an email. But again, I will be sending some information out towards the end of this week. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. Chuck, we brought you in. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we hit on?
No, David, I think we've covered a lot of really awesome information this morning, and I just want to encourage all of our EdTech leaders and our community out there. Man, it's been busy so far since March. We're going to be busy December. So, David, just as you encourage us as team members, I encourage our folks across the state that when they do get an opportunity to step off the grid, take some time off, relax, to please do so, just to make sure that we can hit the ground running with so many of the uncertainties around what this fall is going to look like. So that's all I want to share.
Thank you. Lisa or Janice, did you have anything else you wanted to share with the group?
I don't, David. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't have anything either, David.
Okay. So that's the OET leadership team. And in closing, go ahead, Marty. I'm sorry. Yeah, Marty.
No worries. No worries. We were able to weave in many of the topics that we had discussed on sharing, but I do have a couple that I wanted to mention.
Yes, please do, Marty. Yeah. Sorry about that, Marty. Yeah,
Number one, Just a status from the Kentucky Board of Education meeting. Our first reading of our Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology went very well. And that moves on to second reading in August. Also at the August meeting will be our first reading of our library media standards. And so Laura Raganos is leading our technology standards work from our office, and James Allen is leading our library standards work from our office as well, with writers all throughout the state. And so second reading for our technology standards in August, and first reading of library media standards, which is really exciting. This is also the summer and I totally agree with Chuck. And I think that getting some time away right now, especially as we continue to empower learning through technologies, and we believe that the reopening of our schools in the fall will heavily leverage your skill sets, your leadership. And so July becomes really, it drives towards the work that we're doing really fast and furious. And so this will be the summer of professional learning. A huge shout out to the Murray State team and the summit last week. Heavy attendance by your leaders and your teachers. Awesome work on Monday, yesterday, by Neil Arnett and the Erratic leadership team. Fantastic professional learning opportunity and experiences for our entire state. We have additional opportunities all throughout the summer. The Thursday of this week, we have our first ever Digital Learning Coach Summit. Laura Raganos is leading that for us, and we have over 100 folks attending and learning together at that experience. We have many other opportunities with IFL by the Fayette County Leadership Team. We have KY Go Digital statewide event as well. And so there's a lot of opportunities moving forward, and we just want to continue to encourage to continue to connect with people and share with people and help each other out, share the great things that you're doing from leveraging technology perspective for learning, as well as school efficiencies from a technology perspective. So thanks, David. I'll turn it back to you to close out.
Well, thank you. You notice I have on my STLP shirt, late yesterday, I sent out a note that we sent to all of our Kentucky Board of Education members, and I sent to all you all. I encourage you to also inform and send it and forward it to your legislators, your local legislators. It's just one of the best selling points and best demonstrations of the added value of education technology is that we have. Jeff, you did a great job along with the folks that helped you out with the video clips that we show, that people can go right to our state champions, and also our runners up were pretty dramatic, very, very impressive as well. And as my mom said, is every Kentuckian should watch this because they'll feel great about this investment in education technology. And so as we look toward getting funds and keeping funds at a funding level, one of the best ways we can do that is making sure that the right people are aware of it, just like I made our board aware of it, is make your board aware of it and make the legislators aware of, here are some great examples of it. And one of the funnest things that's in that clip is it's less than a minute, is the students at Blake Elementary who are watching us do the award show. And just clip, if you've not clicked, go down there, as Jeff says, it's one of the funnest things you can watch. And so everyone watching that, I ask you to do that when this gets over, is just click on that and watch the students' reactions of being named one of our state champions. But if you take a time to take a look at their projects, and these videos aren't long, and you can see that these are really sophisticated and make a big difference. So I appreciate you all's efforts for the past few months, and do hope you take some time to recharge your batteries. But as you can see, we still have a lot of things going on, trying to prepare for probably the most unusual school year that we've had, at least during my time at the Kentucky Department of Education. So hope you have a good time. I'll be hanging out here for a little while longer for those that want to hang out. Take care.